Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Glad you're here. Um, Doing something different today. Um, One of the things I'm focusing this channel on is music you've never heard of. Finding a lot of music I've never heard of, and discovering that together, or introducing it to you, you introducing it to me. Finding that music all over the world through space and time that we're not familiar with, and learning something new, being introduced to artists and music that we've never heard before, expanding our horizons. Something I've always done all my life. Um, Even when I was a kid, I was always trying to find the stuff that nobody else was listening to, and really dig into that stuff. Um, so this is going to be a retro installment of music you've never heard. I'm going to introduce you, possibly, you may have already heard of them, but I'm going to introduce you to my favorite band of all time. This is Styx. They've been around for 50 years. Their first album, Styx, was actually released 50 years ago this month in August of 1972. Their first single, Best Thing, was actually released in July of 1972. Actually charted, hit in the 80s on America's Top 100 back in 72. So it didn't do real hot, but it was their first. It was their first album. They were on a very small label known as Wooden Nickel. They do 4 albums there before signing with A&M and going on to become the Styx that a lot more people know, with stuff like Paradise Theater, Kilroy Was Here, things like that. The very first incarnation of Styx was much different than what it was later in the 70s, even, and into the 80s. Styx was actually formed by 3 people: Chuck and John Panazzo, 2 brothers who are the bassist. Chuck is the bassist, John is the drummer, and their next door neighbor was Dennis DeYoung, who played keyboards. He played the accordion, actually. And the 3 of them actually found each other in the south side of Chicago when they were 12 years old. They're back in 1962, 61, somewhere in there. They called themselves Trade Winds, and they actually did stuff around Chicago, very heavily influenced by the Beatles. So they did a lot of covers, but they would do weddings, they would do bar mitzvahs, they would do parties, whatever you wanted them to do, they'd do. And then they went to college, and in 1978 they met John Shurilewski, a guitarist. And he became their 4th member, so they changed their name from Tradewinds to TW4. And then later in 1970, I think, a couple years later, they would meet James Young, another guitarist, and change their name to Styx, which was suggested by their manager when they got a manager and when they were signed. They didn't think TW4 was a great name, so they went with Styx. And that's how they were born. James Young is the rocker of the group. His songs are always more heavy. You might be familiar with some of his stuff, like Snowblind. He actually wrote this song with Dennis DeYoung, Best Thing. And together they were an eclectic mix of James Young's hard rock, Dennis DeYoung's very 50s, 60s inspired keyboards and vocals, but they all harmonized. John Shurilewski was very much the prog rock of the group. Has some crazy music come out with him. But together, the 5 of them, the 3 of them would mainly handle vocals. Chuck and John were pretty much the rhythm and bass of it, and didn't do a lot of vocals. If any, I don't think. But John, Dennis, and James were the 3 primary vocalists, and very easy to tell apart. James Young is, you can hear his voice. He has power in his voice. He's the guy who was born to be a rocker. Dennis DeYoung, very eloquent, very natural voice, just a beautiful voice. And John Shurilewski also kind of falls right in between them. So I'm going to introduce you guys to this band. from 50 years ago. And I'm hoping moving forward, I'll do some more Styx. But I want to introduce you and let you guys try and find them. Maybe go down a rabbit hole. Their first 4 albums were on Wood and Nickel, and they sound very different from when they finally signed with A&M. Their first album with A&M, was Equinox. John Shirolusky actually left after that album, and Tommy Shaw came in and replaced him, and they became more of a mainstream rock band then, less prog rock. John Shirolusky actually would die about a year or 2 later, I believe, from brain cancer. So he was a huge loss. But before all that, this is where they began. You're going to hear a lot of influences, which I'll get into. I'll be stopping the song because I'm going to be talking about it, but I will definitely post links to the entire thing. All of their music is online now. You can find it everywhere. In fact, you can find entire albums, including Styx, the first 4 albums, Styx, Styx 2, Man of Miracles, and Lady. I believe those are the first 4. That doesn't sound like Man in the Wilderness may have been one. Dadgum, no, I'm forgetting. Anyway, their first album is Styx. And so we're going to check this out. This is Best Thing, released 50 years ago last month. Here we go.
Your loving seemed to be the best thing that I ever had. Your loving seemed to be the best thing that I ever had.
You can very much hear 70s guitar in there, just a touch of funk. Dennis's vocals right there on top, very smooth. But you're going to hear a lot of influences. You're going to hear some beats. You're going to be like, I recognize that from somewhere else. They took a lot of influences, and this first album had a lot of that showing up. Very interesting arrangement. A lot of the, like 3/4 of the verse being harmonized by the 3 of them, and then capitalized on the last line by James Young with that gospel organ Dennis DeYoung is peeling away in the background. That hard thump from John and Chuck in the background. Just, it's a driving song. Like, you can't help but just like move to this song. It's such a groove. And in early 1971, this was just you could just, I'm sure I was a year old, so I don't know for sure, but you could feel this coming out of the 60s and going into the 70s, and knowing the music around that era. This was just one of those groove songs that just fit really well. No wonder it charted. You got some really interesting sounds there. You got James Young's solo guitar there, peeling off like he's playing at Woodstock, and then hit with that drum beat at the end that every time I hear it, it sounds just like Mississippi Queen by Mountain, which came out the year before. So it was obviously a little bit of influence there, but I hear it every single time, but it just fits so well in the song. And they were not afraid to change up like that too, going from the hard drums and the electric guitar to a mandolin and acoustic. and these harmonizing vocals. Just, they were not afraid to shift gears like that at all. They did that a lot in the early years, and it really created a crazy kind of just like you thought you were getting into one groove, and then all of a sudden you were woken up in another, and just as you got used to it, they'd kick back into another. It was awesome.
That I ever had. Your loving seemed to be the best thing that I ever had. Oh yeah.
There you go. Best Thing by Styx, released July 1971. A retro music you may have never heard. You probably haven't heard it. I don't think I've ever in my life heard that song on the radio. It was just being their first release. It just got drowned it out by all their other music that came later. They wouldn't actually really hit it big until Lady, which some of you may know. Been in a few movies. That song would really launch them and get them signed by A&M. But that's a few albums away. Right now, they are still slogging it out. I saw an interview with Dennis one time saying, you know, if you graduated high school and went to the prom anytime in the Chicago area or within 50 miles of Chicago between like 1968 and 1972, they played your prom. Like they were just working to get to be rock stars, and working very hard at it, and would find that success, but they'd have to go through a lot to get there. I highly recommend checking out Styx, the original album. It doesn't have a whole lot of songs on it. It only has really 6 songs, 2 on the front side, one being the 13-piece, divided up into 4 sections, Movement for the Common Man, including another kind of hit for them. It was never officially released, but Fanfare for the Modern Man, Fanfare the Common Man, in the 3rd section, kind of became like an underground cult hit for them. Nothing that ever charted or was on the radio, but just well known by their fans. And then right away, and then on the second side, you had What Has Come Between Us, Best Thing, Quick as the Beat of My Heart, and After You Leave. All really good songs. Very short. This is a period, you know, when the other songs were like between 3 and 4 minutes long. Well, I say that, but Movement for the Common Man was almost 14 minutes. So check it out. It's on YouTube. I'll post links so you guys can check it out yourself. And I'll be back around. And if you guys like this, introduce you to some more Styx. This is a band that shaped a lot of my youth in the 80s, and is still a huge influence on me today. And so I just wanted to share it with you guys and see what you think. So do me a favor, jab that like button, help me out with that algorithm. But post a comment below. Let me know what you think. Are you a Styx fan? Have you ever heard of them before? What do you think of this song if you've never heard of them? Subscribe. We'll do some more, and do me a favor and share it with some friends and some complete strangers. I'd appreciate it. Anyway, thanks for being here. Love you guys. See you next time. Bye.